Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of What Do You Think? This is a call-in program. My name is Bill Morse, and I want to welcome you to Thursday, June 24th, 2021. I'm sorry we missed the program last week, but there was a conflict or a same schedule with the graduating class of Bellows Falls Union High School. And of course, myself and everyone here at the station wish each and every one of them the best. It's a very exciting time to be leaving high school and going on either into further education or perhaps some type of service or something on your own. But we wish every graduate from Bellows Falls Union High School the best of luck in the years ahead. They are going to be very, very interesting. This is a great time to be alive and a great time to explore and find out what resonates in your life. So, again, I wanted to, before we start, just mention two websites, not websites, but YouTube channels that I would recommend if you have 5 or 10 minutes and you're on YouTube that you check out. I myself have been following the saga surrounding Father Altman, who is a Catholic priest in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And Father Altman is very outspoken. Reminds me a little bit of Father Goring, who has a parish outside of Toronto, who is also very outspoken. Anyway, Father Altman has been suspended by his bishop, Bishop William Callahan, from the Diocese of La Crosse for his homilies dealing with the church's response to COVID-19 restrictions and lockdowns. Many churches did close last year. There were no on-site services. Some places did offer a virtual mass for people to view on television or on their computer screen, but many people did not have that option. And so Father Altman has been rather outspoken in the church's need to step up and show a little bit more independent leadership in regards to the people who they are spiritually trying to help. So ALTMAN, Father Altman, if you're interested. It's a story about, I'm sure, a situation that has been repeated in many other dioceses in Canada and also the United States. So, and the other recommendation I wanted to pass along was for Barricade Garage, who has a YouTube channel. He hasn't been active the last 6 or 7 days. Perhaps he's been taken off YouTube or temporarily suspended for some of his outspoken points of view. He is an interesting individual, grew up through the foster family networker program. He spent time with gangs. Subsequently, he spent time in prison, 6 months in solitary confinement. He used the time to kind of get his act together, tighten up, as he would say, and go hard in that respect, starting his own mechanical car repair business, specializing in Jeeps. He's in Virginia, and he talks about his experiences. He talks about where things are going in our country and in the world, foreign policy. He has a very interesting perspective given his rather gritty and I would say dangerous background, the things that he's been exposed to. So, Barricade Garage. And one of his commenters, I'm like you, when I watch something on YouTube, I often, while I'm listening, I look at the comments to see what other people have reacted to in the content or have contributed. And there was a gentleman whose name is Trailer Park Pimp, who quoted the following from John Adams. Not Sam Adams, the person we associate with beer in Boston, but John Adams. If you don't know who John Adams is, feel free to look him up. Rather important person in early years of our country. And he said the following, and I'm going to, forgive me for reading it, I don't have it memorized, but he said, "If you love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, then go home from us in peace." I'll say that once more. If you love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, the challenge he's talking about, then go home from us in peace. I think he's talking to people who are loyal to Britain, who did not want the United States to take an independent path. The second part, we want not your advice nor your weapons. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. In this case, the government of England, George III, that still wanted to maintain the United States as a profitable colony. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were Americans. And I'll repeat the second part once more. We want not your advice nor your weapons. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you, the British hands. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were Americans. So, I think there's a certain relevance to what he said 220 years ago that resonates today, and I'll just let you figure that. I'll just let you consider how relevant that quote is with the current state of events with our country on the world stage presently. So, what we're going to do today is look at a newspaper. We've done this before. We looked at a 1966 Times reporter from Bellows Falls, Springfield, a couple of months, maybe a month and a half ago, 1966, and we drew parallels between what was happening then with civil rights and the Vietnam War and what's happening now. I found another old newspaper. This is actually from my hometown. It's the New London Day, and we're going back a little further in time. We're going to tomorrow, 66 years ago. In other words, we're going to June 25th, 1955. We're going back to June 25th, 1955, a little less than a year before I was born. And we're going to look at a couple of articles that I think have relevance today. The main headline for Saturday, June 25th, 1955, was a MiG attack on a U.S. Navy bomber over the Bering Sea. Now, what is a MiG? M-I-G. If you don't know what a MiG is, you're probably less than 30 years old. I don't even think they use the term MiG anymore, but in the 50s, when jets started taking over aerial weaponization, let's say, the MiGs were jet fighter planes. We would have F-15s, they would have MiGs. And if you're a World War II buff or historian, then you know that the Germans, and during the Nazi regime in the early 40s, developed the first weaponized jet, the Messerschmitt 262, which actually participated in dogfights against U.S. and British forces in 44 into 45. In fact, the last day of the war, May 8th, 1945, there was an ace who flew his Me-262 over into airspace that was occupied by the Soviet Air Force and was able to take down one or two planes before heading for an American-held airfield where he surrendered. So they're called MiGs by the Soviets, and this MiG appeared out of nowhere while a Navy bomber was patrolling over the Bering Sea. Now, the Bering Sea, according to a geography class, the Bering Sea is located between where and where? Well, between a place that became a state in the mid-50s. In fact, I think this was a state before this attack in 1955. I'm not sure. Maybe if you know different, then you could call in, because this is a call-in program. There is Zoom information at the bottom of the screen. You're welcome to call in any time. It's not just me doing a monologue, all right? Although sometimes it is. Anyway, Alaska. I'm not sure if Alaska was a state yet in June 25th, 1955. I'm not sure Hawaii was a state yet. We were still 48 states. Anyway, the Bering Sea is a body of water, Bering Strait, a narrow channel of water between Alaska and Siberia on the upper northeast of Russia. And I know scholars believe that people came over the Bering Strait when it froze and came down into California. In fact, that's how the Eskimos or native people came down into Northern California over the Bering Strait. And later on, Russians came under the Tsar. Russian colonists and explorers came over to the Yukon, over the through Alaska into the Yukon, and then down into British Columbia and settled into Northern California. So anyway, it's a spot where two superpowers kind of rub shoulders, the Bering Sea. And so evidently, a few days before June 25th, a MiG fighter plane came and strafed or shot at with their machine gun this Navy bomber, which was alone doing a patrol. The MiG, according to the captain, appeared out of nowhere, took one pass at the bomber, strafed it, and then continued disappearing into Soviet airspace. We don't know, according to this Associated Press report, if the American plane, the U.S. Navy bomber, was in fact in Soviet space or in international airspace. That's not mentioned, and perhaps someday it'll be declassified. But fortunately, the crew was not injured. The plane did catch fire. They had to land the plane on the water, fortunately not far from an island off the coast of Alaska. All crew members made it out alive. One suffered a broken leg from his jump into the water, and the plane did not explode, but it burned. And I want to quote the captain in this AP article who said, they went back to St. Lawrence Island. That was where the captain watched the plane he loved. This was his ship, burn to a jumble of wreckage. Only the bow, tail, and 2 wingtips were left, the captain said. I sure hate to see a plane burn. It hurts. So, again, fortunately, Providence was shining on the crew members. Two of them were hit by machine gun bullets during the strafing, but that was it. They recovered, and I think 3 of the crewmen, there were 11 on board, quite a large crew, 11 crew members on board this bomber. 3 of them went right back into service after being checked out, and the remaining 8 needed to be hospitalized for minor burns and cuts. And fortunately, none of them really took a bullet in a vital organ, so they all survived and got better. Sorry. So anyway, that was the lead story, this MiG attack, unprovoked, in the article, unprovoked MiG attack on a U.S. Navy bomber. And this was the 5th, number 5. This was the 5th time that a Soviet aircraft, a MiG, had attacked a U.S. warplane. There may have been other times. Again, we don't know. We don't even really know if there were dogfights, but this did make it into Associated Press. And as today, most of the newspapers relied on the Associated Press for their news articles, especially for international. So anyway, that was the lead article for Saturday, June 25th, 1955, the MiG attack on a American warplane. And another story, which was much more local, actually took place in New London. I call it Hijinks in the Alley. And this was on page 2, and it says, no bloodshed in 25 cents quarrel, but 2 go to jail. In other words, there was a fight over 25 cents in 1955, which in today's money would probably be $5 with inflation. Anyway, a scrap, in other words, a fight over a quarter during a dice game resulted in 2 men being sent to county jail today from police court. This was in New London. Evidence in the case included a straight razor and a butcher knife, but neither man was cut. The scrappers, and these aren't people that go through your house and take your pipes, these are fighters. The scrappers were Enos G. Burden, 21 years of age, of 62 Douglas Street, which was obliterated during New London's urban renewal or redevelopment phase. Douglas Street doesn't exist. And Jerome Barnes, 37, of 97 Green Street. 97 Green Street is very close to 94 Golden Street, and I lived there for 15 years rehabbing a building there. So I know 97 Green Street. It is still there. But Jerome Barnes, age 37, is not. Burden was sentenced to 3 months for breach of peace and was found not guilty of carrying a concealed weapon. Why? Because he probably threw it away. Barnes had weapons. Okay, the second part. Barnes, charged with 2 counts of concealed weapons, received 30 days on each, 30 days of jail time. He was found not guilty of breach of peace. Judge Lewis C. Wool ordered the terms to run consecutively, which means that he served 30 days. Barnes was called as a state's witness against Burden and gave his story of the fracas, or the scrap. Two other men, he and Burden, were near the railroad tracks off Hallam Street last night drinking wine and shooting dice for small change, like a quarter. As the dice were being rolled, Burden accused Barnes of stealing his quarter, which Barnes, of course, denied. Burden then whipped out a switchblade knife and cornered Barnes against some railway equipment, boxcar or something. Barnes pleaded with Burden to put the weapon away. Burden did so, but warned Barnes to stay off the streets or face a cutting. Barnes then gave Burden a 1-2 punch to the jaw, like a prize fighter, knocked him down, and then ran home, where he armed himself with the butcher knife and razor, and then returned to Main Street. Main Street is close to where Hallam Street is, very close. While standing around, he was arrested by Patrolman John T. Hurd. Prosecutor Aaron E. Elfenbein said Burden complained against Barnes when friends told him that Barnes was out looking for trouble. Now, Burden admitted having a knife, but said that he had thrown it away after the argument. He claimed the knife was under 4 inches. Well, then it wasn't a switchblade. Was under 4 inches, and as such did not violate the statute governing concealed weapons. It was probably a Boy Scout knife. Elfenbein said both men have long records for offenses of violence. So why are they hanging about? Sympathetic intervention by patrolmen. Different story, but they don't tell you. That's the end of the story for no bloodshed in 25-cent quarrel. But there's a second story with a Vermont angle to it. All right, and it goes like this. This is kind of like a police log. Sympathetic intervention by Patrolman Cornelius P. Donahue, Jr., won suspended judgments for 3 circus roustabouts. Now, roustabouts are laborers. Arrested yesterday aboard a Central Vermont Railway freight train. Probably came through Bellows Falls. Charged with trespassing railroad property were Samuel Perry, 47, Edward Moore, 33, and Cecil Alexander, 25, all of no certain address. Why? Because they probably worked for a circus, and circuses move from town to town. They were arrested by Donahue, Patrolman Harold A. Street, and railroad officer Edward S. Funk in a freight car of a train the officers boarded near Riverside Park. Central Vermont has a small freight yard near Riverside Park on the Thames River. But Donahue said the 3 men were honest workers who had hopped the train in Vermont after leaving the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus to get better paying jobs with the World of Mirth Carnival now in Waterford. Now, I just so happen to have a picture from that same newspaper of the World of Mirth. I'll hold it up, and if it's possible to focus on this just briefly. It's hard to see because my finger's in the way, and also because it's a poor quality photograph. They didn't have digital cameras in 1955. They had these big boxy things that had flash bulbs and had very finicky shutter adjustments. But anyway, you're looking at a trailer. You're looking at advertisement painted on the trailer and a central entrance at the top of stairs. And this was the World of Mirth. This is where the 3 roustabouts were hoping to get work by hopping a train from Vermont and getting off the train in New London. Thank you. So I thought that was interesting because it really doesn't happen too often that people take the train, freight train that is, to ride and look for work, but it was very common in the 30s. The 40s, there was plenty of work, and the 50s, well, we did have a good economy, but evidently these gentlemen were more comfortable working in a circus because they knew how to set up tents and attend to animals, etc., and take things down, but we're looking for better pay with the World of Mirth in nearby Waterford. All right, so that's a Vermont story, kind of. Anyway, I think it's cool that the officers used their discretion and just stuck with trespass, which is really nothing, and hopefully they made it, although the circus was closing. So they show up in New London looking for the circus, and the circus is in its last day. So hopefully they found some other type of work. Speaking of work, there was the General Assembly in Connecticut yesterday voted to pay inmates of the State Farm for Women, that's a prison, at Niantic 25 cents a day. 25 cents a day. Okay? The women now receive nothing. So they work at a farm, vegetables, fruit, raising animals, doing, I don't know, not everybody made license plates, of course. That's stereotypical. The women now receive nothing. The legislature also granted an increase from 15 to 25 cents a day in the pay of inmates of the state prison and the state reformatory. So women were not given the same equal pay. They received nothing. And it looks like they're going to have equal pay with their male counterparts that were in the state prison system or state reformatory. So, a bit of good news there, huh? From 1955. Now, also good news. What's on TV tonight, Saturday, June 25th? You're going to see that, well, I draw your own conclusions. There were three TV stations at the time, WNHC in New Haven, WJAR in Providence, WPRO in Providence. And the listings start at 5 p.m. and go until the latest is 1:30 a.m. with a news wrap-up. Other than that, you got a test pattern in 1955. So, the programming starts with Disneyland, Lone Ranger, You Asked for It, This Is Your Life, Imogene Coca, who is a comedian, the Star Theater, George Gobel, who was also a comedian, Henry Fonda, evidently had his own program, wrestling at 11:30. Wrestling, Saturday night. Nightcap Theater, after the children have gone to bed. Looking to the other two programs, the other two channels, I see Death Valley Days, Duffy's Tavern, which was a radio program, a comedy. I've heard it. It's okay. Doesn't stand the test of time very well, but not all comedians do. Who else are we looking at? Ray Milan, Roy Rogers, anybody else? Winky Dink. I forget who Winky Dink was. Captain Midnight, Professional Father, Greatest Bands, and Two for the Money. Now, a lot of these programs started out on radio in the 30s, and then as television was starting to take more and more of radio's audience away, these stars got into television starting in the late 40s and into the 50s. Some did well. Some, unfortunately, like Ed Wynn, who was who started in vaudeville. He had his own radio comedy program did not do so well, and they would last. What their material didn't transfer well onto a screen. So anyway, that was on television, and Guy Lombardo is in New London, appearing with his Royal Canadians this Saturday or tonight at Ocean Beach Park. And advance tickets are $1.80 at Malov's, Harry's Music Shop, and Robert's Electric Shop. $1.80 to see and dance to Guy Lombardo on the boardwalk at New London's Ocean Beach Park on Long Island Sound. All righty, so we're going to shift gears, and we're going to look at the political cartoon that appeared in the Day, the Evening Day, Saturday, June 25th, 1955. I'm going to ask our studio technician to see if he can zoom in on this political cartoon. There's a man and a woman that are arguing while the man drives the car. They're at an impasse. They can go left or right or straight ahead. The wife is telling the man, her husband, which way to go, and the man is frustrated because there are choices and he's not sure which choice to make. On the back of on the trunk of the car, it says polio vaccination uncertainty, and on the license plate it gives the year 1955. Now, thank you. There are actually two people, the mother and the mother's mother, so the mother-in-law. They are labeled the experts. The husband or son-in-law is labeled the public. And there's a boy in the back seat with the mother-in-law, and the boy has no confidence. And so there's signs that are giving all kinds of indications. One says road closed, full stop, detour, no turns, watch for children playing, soft shoulders, danger, falling rocks, and cattle crossing. So the caption above it is, "Now where are we? Now where are we?" Now this was in light of the controversy surrounding polio vaccination in the first half of 1955. Now, a little background on polio. Most people, myself included, would have to do a little research on what polio exactly was. It's a virus or disease that paralyzes people and can lead to death. Probably the most famous person who suffered polio was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was President of the United States for 4 terms, roughly 1932 to 1945. He did not live out his 4th and final term. Harry Truman, who was his vice president, had to step in, and this was, I'd say, a month before Germany surrendered, so it was a very sticky period. Also, the bomb was being developed. Actually, it had been developed. Roosevelt had polio most of his adult life. He would often go to the Warm Springs in Georgia, which was a spa, and he sought treatment there in the waters. The waters did not cure him of polio. But it's interesting, again, as a comparison then and now, the press had a code of ethics, and journalists who were covering the president would never show him with crutches. They would never show him laid up or in a weakened position because he could not walk. If you saw movie film or still photography of President Roosevelt, you never saw him in a wheelchair, and you never saw him really in any physically compromised position because, of course, he was a leader and he had to portray this image of strength and mental as well as physical vitality. So, but the virus, as I said, was paralytic. It paralyzed people, mostly children. Children were the main target, main victims of polio. And it caused them to become paralyzed. They would need crutches. Sometimes it would kill them. The March of Dimes, if you're old enough to remember, was a campaign kind of like the Jimmy Fund at Boston Red Sox game. The March of Dimes was a campaign to fund research into a antidote for polio. And the reason why June 25th, this cartoon appears, in which it shows indecision as to what the public should do in light of this vaccine, is because there was a vaccine developed by a company, a pharmaceutical company called Cutter, C-U-T-T-E-R. And Cutter worked with private research funding, private oversight, and developed a vaccine that they were hoping to distribute to children during the summer, because summer months is when this polio virus peaks and is the most dangerous for young people. Again, there was no federal oversight. This was something new in the medical history of the United States. And the program of the Cutter vaccine was to target all first and second graders in a 3-shot process. We've heard a 2-shot process. This was a 3-shot process. All right. Those that got the vaccine, 10%, according to this articles that I've looked at, and I've tried to find non-biased articles, medical journal articles on the situation at this time. 10% of those vaccinated still got the virus. They were crippled after getting the 3 shots, and a few died despite the 3-shot vaccine. Again, there was no federal oversight, and so this led to roughly half the parents saying, no, we don't want the vaccine for our children because it's experimental. So with half the parents saying no to the vaccine was dropped, and a more effective, less dangerous vaccine came out in 1962. So we're talking 7 years of research and work to further a better vaccine. A couple of differences and similarities. The similarities to our current situation with COVID-19 and our response through lockdowns and restrictions. I think the media coverage is much more intense. I also think that the government, though it is more involved in vaccine development, often through its various agencies, gives us a changing narrative that is hard to follow and ultimately, in my opinion, hard to believe. The state-mandated lockdowns did not occur in '55. In fact, they did not occur with SARS, which was a more contagious virus than COVID. And then, of course, with COVID, the risk group is not the younger people, it's the older people, with a mortality rate of, I'd say, less than 2%. So it's interesting I bring this up because we've been down this road before with vaccines, and I think now the situation has been ramped up. You have pharmaceutical giants that are pushing their solution, even though it's experimental. I think we should, personally, I think we should wait. Less than 1% mortality rate with even the most problematic groups, or 2%, I should say, I don't think is worth rushing into an experimental vaccine. and I'm not sure how effective, according to research findings from various medical groups, how effective our lockdowns, mandates, and mask wearings have been. So anyway, that's just some food for thought. Again, we have dealt with vaccines before. I thought it was interesting to share with you the parallels between the public, the experts, and those who have no confidence, in this case, the child who was the target of vaccine against polio in 1955. And what we have been looking at over the last year and will continue to look at with not only COVID, but other variants that supposedly are going to be coming our way. So open minds, cautious minds, and I would just say look for more than one source for your information, informing, and opinion. So I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope you found the program interesting. From time to time, we will be looking at older newspapers. And I think history has much to tell us because we've been around the block more than once with various issues. And hopefully the more we learn, the less we have to go around that block. So again, my name is Bill Morris. I want to thank you for tuning in this evening. We'll be back next Thursday at 5:45, 5:45 for another 45 minutes. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about or what you'll talk about because this is your program. You call in. But in the meantime, I want to wish you a good weekend. Enjoy the nice weather, and God bless. Bye-bye.